My Girl Life podcast is sponsored by Glamour Boutique. Glamour Boutique is the leading name in cross-dressing fashion and lifestyle with a physical location in New Jersey and, of course, their famous website. Be sure to use your My Girl Life discount code MGL15. And listen, I know they have your best interests at heart, so check them out. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of My Girl Life podcast. Before we get started, I wanted to remind you to please show me some love and subscribe to my channel below and like the episode if you like it. And this is a special episode as I've got the hosts of the Fox and the Phoenix podcast in the studio today, Savannah, Hauk, and Julie Rubenstein. And welcome to the show, ladies.
Hi. Happy to be here.
So happy to be here. We had a little technical difficulties at the start on my end, but we're finally here, and I'm so excited to be here. So thank you.
We weren't sure Julie was going to make it, so
yes,
we're glad she did. So there's several dynamics to discuss here. First of all, you guys have a successful podcast of your own called The Fox and the Phoenix, and we have Julie, a cis woman, and Savannah, a cross-dresser. Am I correct on that?
Well,
yes.
Julie's definitely a cis woman. I think I defy labeling. No, biological male, heterosexual male, cross-dressing, dual gender, and trans person. That's where I'm at now. Actually, Julie and I were just having a podcast and talking about labels and how we describe ourselves and differences and similarities. So that's what I'll give you for now.
Oh, perfect. You know what? I'm not a big fan of the word crossdresser. But when it comes to social media and searches and YouTube, and that's the word. Everything's a spectrum, right? So labels get a little sticky. I do want to talk about the podcast. Absolutely. But before we get into that, I'd like to learn a little bit about each of your backgrounds and how you guys met. So Savannah, why don't you start? Where'd you grow up? What was your childhood like?
Ooh, I'm sorry. I didn't know I was going to therapy today. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, lower middle class family, middle child, father working class, working 7 days, fairly good student, not very athletic, loved creative stuff even when I was growing up, went to college, for 6 years for architecture, did not work a day in the industry because we were in a recession when I graduated college.
Oh, nice.
Started doing graphic design with my then wife, moved to from Detroit to New York City for the big city. And that is where Savannah just started realizing,
is that where Savannah was born?
That's where 1996. That was where Savannah was born. The name came there. I had seen all these drag queens and men walking down the street holding hands in the the village, and all of a sudden the whole world opened up. So being very closeted in Detroit led to kind of this epiphany and blossoming of Savannah in New York City.
But you were dressing before that. It was just that you didn't really know what it meant. And at that time, you're kind of describing it all started to make a little sense.
You gotta remember, man, this was the 70s and 80s is when I grew up. So in 1996, the words were just starting to pop out. Not even then for
There's no
gender
internet,
diversity. Internet was like, 89, 90, 91 when people were starting to have access. So yeah, I didn't know what the words were. I knew the words crossdresser. I knew the words transvestite. In 96 is when I said, I am going to call myself a transvestite. I accept that as my label. And then quickly said, I don't like transvestite. It sounds
I hate
skizzy.
That word.
So I ended up using crossdresser, which is obviously the English version of transvestite, same exact thing. And then went from there and worked in New York for 22 years. And then now I'm in South Carolina. Same job, just different locations. So I've been working the same company for 29 years in the IT website space. And now I'm here with you.
Great. Well, how about you, Julie? What's your story, young lady?
My story, get cozy, everyone. My story starts in 1979 when I was born. I was a redhead. I was shy, very shy. I was very dyslexic, very dyscalculic, and had a narcissistic mother who didn't understand, didn't see me. Um,
That must have
and
been tough.
it was very challenging, and yet it's made me who I am today because of it and in spite of it. But yes, very challenging. I kind of went through the school system, just didn't really talk. If anyone out there has a learning disability, public school, especially back in the day, is not your friend. You had to be a quick auditory learner or quick visual learner, and
Right.
I just wasn't either one of those. So it was really, really traumatic. So halfway through my freshman year, I went off to boarding school. I tried it as a day student, a special school on the East
Was that your
Coast.
choice, or were you forced to do that?
So it was literally the only place that could help me learn. It was a place where my affluent town, I grew up upper middle class, very affluent. I was one of the only Jews and first Jews in my town. Like it was very upper crust, and that means they're supposed to have the best public schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when the public schools just couldn't teach me, they had to legally provide funding for a school that could. And that was a school called
Mm.
Landmark in the North Shore that as a day student, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to leave my friends. In fact, on the tour, I remember gripping really hard and not getting out of my car, which is a whole nother scene. But I tried it halfway through my freshman year as a day student. I was only 45 minutes away. Again, brutally shy. Where was I? There was a dress code. I just was very afraid. And I knew that the following year I wanted to be a resident. That's where I was going to make friends. And so the following year I um, was in a dorm and I made my family. I got away from my mother. I hit the stage. I realized I was funny. So it really kind of defined
And you
my
had a
experience.
chosen family. Like I have a sign on my wall here with my friends' pictures, and it's called "Chosen My Chosen Family."
Exactly. And it saved my life, mostly in the way that I can get away from my family and see how the world lives. Because when you live in these affluent towns, it's not real world kind of
Right.
experience. And this was real world experience. You had kids from all over the place, from the poorest of the poor to like the richest getting picked up in limos. You had the full
Which I
kind of
think is some of the
spectrum.
beauty of college or going on to higher education is meeting people from other places. My kids grew up in a suburb in a bubble.
Yeah.
We weren't wealthy or rich by any means, but there were people, affluent people, and they just grew up in this bubble, and they expected us to pay for their college and what have you. And I couldn't wait for them to go to college and meet people from other walks of life and other cities, and you know all the stuff that you're kind of referring to.
And I was too afraid to go far for college. I went to boarding school, then I went to this college in Boston. I was too afraid to have my adventure. So when I graduated college, the thought of living near my mother for $10 an hour, working at Perkins School for the Blind was scarier than me actually trying this and going to San
It's kind of
Francisco.
lesser of evils, huh?
It's just like, what do I have to lose? So I moved by myself to the Bay Area. I was staying with a friend of a friend. There was a lot of kind of newness there. I've always been very much into the drag culture, especially when it comes to male to female
What do you think
transformation.
attracted you to that culture?
I think it's just something that has always been in me. I think just the idea that I have a theater background. I love I love the gay kind of community. And I've always been, from the time I saw, Tootsie, and there was Mrs. Doubtfire. Hairspray was the first one, Jonathan Waters' Hairspray with Ricky
Right?
Lake. The idea that this male to female transformation could take place was so fascinating to me. And I think it left a real note. And then the drag scene, I just felt held in a different way. And it's so
Yep.
interesting when drag started to go to the mainstream because of RuPaul's Drag Race, I felt
Right.
exposed in such a weird way. I didn't watch it for years and I just felt kind of like,
You're like, this is my thing.
right,
It's
like
not the rest of
what
the world's
everyone watched.
thing.
Right. It's like discovering that you thought you were the only person that loves tacos, and it turns out like everyone loves tacos because they're freaking
Right.
delicious. Like that was a whole thing.
Well, I
Um,
personally think the LGBTQ
yeah,
community is more fun than the general population. I mean, I spend more time in the general
totally.
population, but our community is just more fun. I'm sorry. What do you
Well, I
think,
will
Savannah?
say to Julie's point, there's when we go to Keystone Conference in Harrisburg, and I can't tell you how many times cis women come up to me to chat about the book or whatever and talk about they are way more comfortable and feel more free inside our community than with their own best friends back home. So yeah, there's something about the freedom, vulnerability, and confidence in our
Yeah,
community
and that
that
I think that emanates in just to an energy that people can sense and feel. They may not
yeah.
be able to identify it necessarily. Some things they may, but there's definitely an energy to it. And if you're open to it, then I think that takes you to another level and opens up a new world. Um, Savannah, tell me a little bit about your dressing and kind of how summarizing kind of how that came about and how you got to where you are now, going out in public and being on a podcast and not afraid to be seen. I'm sure that wasn't true the first
Oh no,
few
it
years
wasn't true. I
by
mean,
any stretch.
we didn't really talk about it, but growing up, knowing like from 5, 6, 7 years old, having this draw and being drawn to the feminine clothing, kitten heels, like anything I could find to get my hands on from my mother or my sister. That was all things that were felt very natural to me in that day and age, not knowing what it was called in 1976,
If
77.
you could use one adjective to describe when you first started putting on those clothes, articles of clothing, first of all, what were they? Did you have favorite articles? And what was the adjective that came to mind when you did that? Or did you have an adjective?
I don't think I had an adjective. I wasn't thinking, it was all about the tactile nature of it. It was all about the feeling. I don't know if I have a word to describe it.
See, but
I
the
mean, you could be
feeling in it.
euphoric. It could be calming. It could be home. I don't know if I thought that much about it at the time. It was
Mm-mm.
just like, again, cause even then it was in secret. Even then it was
Yeah.
stolen moment. So like I couldn't really commit to like, oh, now that I'm here, now that I'm dressed in my sister's bathing suit, let's say, to like really be able to sit in that feeling and
Well,
describe
and you
it
got
or
fear
feel it.
right on your
Yeah.
shoulder, like,
Yeah.
with somebody coming home, am I going to
Right.
get caught? And, it doesn't allow you to kind of go into that world and what do I feel,
Right. So it wasn't
To me, it always
until,
felt soothing to put on the nylons or, back in the day, my mom, it was a girdle, like the
yep.
old
Yep.
fashioned girdle. And I loved the way it hugged my hips. I don't know
That
why. It just felt soothing.
I will say there's
Mm-mm.
a comfort to that swaddling, to that like compression. I definitely know that it was also fulfilling. I'm a comic geek, so even when I was a kid, I love female superheroes. So there was something about putting on my sister's leotard that felt
Uh-huh.
very empowering as well. So that was like my early adolescence into teenage years. I did have a girlfriend or two that I spoke about it, and I was even able to wear very
Girlfriend?
quickly, huh?
Girlfriend as in girlfriend or
A
a
girl,
friend
not a
that was
friend
a
who's a
girl?
girl, but a girlfriend.
Okay.
And I told her I would really love to. And we were similar size at the time, and she let me try on her prom dress. And that was an amazing experience to
I'll
one be
bet.
able to do it and to have that kind of support system to do it. And that was kind of the highlight of my adolescence, teenage years, and then moving to New York and seeing the world open up to me.
Oh, what
And
a difference.
and
Yeah.
what a difference. And I was married at the time, and she knew at that finally, I think I told her maybe a year in, like what this thing was or what I understood it to be. So she
Uh-huh.
got her friends from work, and her friend at work had a girlfriend, and they became my den mothers, and they kind of did the head to
Oh, you're
toe
lucky.
montage of like getting ready and them doing my makeup and picking out a dress and going to Madden's for
Oh, how
shoes
nice.
and then going to the
Hey,
clubs downtown. So that was on my first renaissance in the late 90s of going to Lucky Chang's, going to like the meatpacking district where the clubs were. Lee's Mardi Gras was a super famous clothier like for drag and trans women downtown. So like
I can
those
see
were,
all those memories running through your brain right
yeah,
now. And you're
yeah. So that
loving
was
it.
like the second renaissance. But while it was very emboldening and confident building, what then all of a sudden, you know, I find myself not married and going with other partners, and then the degree of acceptance waned. So I went from this super high of like clubbing
Oh
and
yeah,
being
very
dialed up.
unique
Yeah.
anomaly type situation.
Yeah. So ended up like it was ebb and flow for years of like, you know, out of the closet, in the closet, somewhat out, someone in. And then it wasn't until coming down to South Carolina where I realized there's a whole new world. This is the first time when I came to South Carolina, it was the first time I felt more confident to go out in a day than ever.
Nice.
So, and
Hey,
that's where I am
Julie,
now.
Yes.
as a cis woman, when we talk about when we put it on the nylons and the girdle and the loving the feeling of hugging your hips or whatever, the feeling of the stockings, does that translate to cis women, or do you just? I know you don't wear girdles, but does that translate, or do you just take it for granted and it's just something you do and you don't think really that much about it?
I think it's pretty um, diluted as opposed to the potency that the community I work with feels.
Right.
And because I'm so in tune with every client I work with, and because I'm such a tactile person by nature, I can really tune in and be in that space, you know, put myself in the heels and
Literally,
understand
yeah.
how nylons could be so alluring, and the elasticity and a bodycon dress. Like, and when I break it down in my mind, it's a turn on to me in more ways than not, because I'm literally understanding on a really visceral level. Um,
And I
and
think that's probably
yeah,
very necessary for your business. I mean, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but
yeah,
understanding those feelings makes you a much different um, uh, consultant than just somebody who is picking out different styles or colors, but knowing how the person's going to feel in the clothing.
yes,
That's a deal. That's a whole nother level.
yes. And feeling good in your clothes and feeling confident, that is something, and wearing clothes that fit your body, that is universal. That is a
Right.
human experience that many people, I don't want to say most, many people, many Homo sapiens, if you will, experience that kind of feeling of when they put something on that feels good, that, or when they see a shirt that feels great, just that illumination, or, you know, all of that kind of stuff is real stuff. We're a visual people. We respond to
Yeah.
visual stuff. We're sensory people.
Well, I remember
I
David
think,
when I
yeah.
interviewed David from the Glamour Boutique, and he talks about, you know, when they finish the makeover and they don't let the person see themselves until the very end, and they turn them
Mm-hmm.
around and they stand up and look in the mirror. Some people cry,
Oh, the
but
best.
I have goosebumps just talking about it.
Yeah.
He that's his favorite part, is that
Yeah,
unveiling.
for sure.
Um, Savannah, you in terms of your dressing, were there big gaps in your dressing? And if they're like, you know, the purging and then a gap and then going back to it and then purging, were there any small gaps or large gaps from when
Well,
you
first
started
of
till
all,
now?
I'm too thrifty and cheap to ever purge. So I've never had an actual, I'm getting rid of everything full on, I'm done with it. Never had that kind of purge. But I
You're
have
smart. You're
had,
smart.
well, because I'm cheap. Um, but I've had long periods and gaps of put away. Like after I was married and
Yep.
every other relationship, they knew right away that this is who I am. Again, based on how much I understood of myself at that time. So everybody was aware, but there was again a level of intolerance or tolerance or acceptance for each of those relationships that caused me to recess back into the closet, and all my stuff would end up being, you know, in drawers or in a Rubbermaid container. So I always kept it at the ready, but never did I say, I don't feel comfortable with myself and I want to get rid of who I am. as a person. I've never had that. I've come close. There was one time where I had to make a decision, or I felt I had to make a decision in order to keep my relationship. But that was more out of fear of losing the person than
Right.
about.
It wasn't internal necessarily.
Right. It was like, hey, I'll choose you over this. And she was like, no, you won't. And I'm like, you're right. I won't. So that's about as close as I got to getting rid of Savannah in any way. But yeah, there was plenty of gaps of like hiding away and waiting for people to go out of town and like bringing Savannah out just for moments at a time. Sure. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Julie, you were going to say something?
Your experience, Savannah, that you had is so grounded and it's so self-assured, and it's so, I think it's based on, the girlfriend who let you try their dress on for prom. It had to do with the amount of experiences you had for by the time you were really living as Savannah, or realizing that, why would I get rid of anything? Like, you were a full-fledged person in terms of your cross-dressing and your dual gender nature. For so many of my clients, for so many people, and we talked about this on our podcast a lot, the pink cloud of ordering so much stuff. I love this. I love this. I love this. And then the shame that comes with it, whether you get caught, whether you realize that this is sick, disgusting, twisted, whatever it is.
Amen,
the act of putting all these clothes in a bag is a literal idea that I'm making myself disappear.
Mm-hmm.
I am taking the evidence, I'm taking the items that make me a woman, and I am putting it away. I'm getting rid of myself. Please, God, let me get rid of myself. Okay? But the secret that I have discovered through this work that I do is that you can't get rid of yourself. Yourself is inside. And so that kind of binary, that manic nature to get rid of and then get so much, and get rid of and get so much, or even just get so much in general, makes having a personal shopper like me such kind of a mindful act, because it's very specific. You're not just spending all your money on like, oh, this would look cute, this would look cute. I'm not even going to look at the size chart, because who cares? I'm so drawn by the hot, sexy girl that I see in my mind that I want to produce, that it eliminates that idea to really battle yourself. It's so much or it's nothing. There's some mindfulness. So yeah, but I'm saying yes, go ahead.
Let's talk about, since you're mentioning your business, let's talk about your consulting business, because I think that's fascinating. I think how you engage with our community and do your thing. So let's talk about that. How did you start the business, and what do you do with the business?
Well, Fox and Hanger was started a little over a decade ago. I had my daughter at the time was, in kindergarten, and I had this space of time where I knew I needed to follow this dream. And the dream was always to be a stylist. So I took this course just to feel confident. I got
aside from the community, aside from the LGBT community, you wanted to be a stylist in general first.
In general, something was pulling me, right?
Right.
When I started doing it, I helped a couple cis people go from, workout gear to, I guess, fabulousness. It didn't. I tried to enforce rules about, what one must have, but I'm a rule breaker. I'm a rebel. And so that didn't speak to me.
But I think to break rules, you need to know what the rules are. To go outside the boundaries, you need to know where the boundaries are. That's how I feel.
100%. And so one night I went to this mixer at this thrift store in my town that just kind of appeared like a mirage. Like I had never seen it before. I'd gone that day and a woman's like, come back, I'm having a mixer. So I went, and it was a small group of people. And I actually found out that this woman hosted like a cross-dressing group once a month at this place. So this person was like a den mother.
Yep.
Right. So then I met a beautiful trans woman, in their 70s, that we were interacting, and they said, there's a real need for people like you in our community, especially among trans women. And it was that moment between, like I said at the beginning, my fascination with drag queens and the male to female beautifulness,
And your desire to be a stylist.
My desire to be a stylist, my not having a brain that everyone had, my body, like just everything felt like it came together at that magical
It's
moment.
like the
And there
perfect
might as
storm,
well be
yeah.
right. So it was at that moment where I knew this is what I'm supposed to do. This is why I did the styling thing. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
And this was
And
about 10 years ago.
this was about, over 10 years ago.
Okay.
And the next day I created the style questionnaire. I wanted to reach people online. So it just kind of went from there. So that's really the origin story and like the birthplace.
Nice. Well, okay. So how did you guys meet? Who wants to tell that story?
Well, I trust the story that we can can ping pong with it.
All right. I will start. I'll start and you can fill in all the awesome gaps. So
all right, you don't want to do a rock, paper, scissors for it? You're just going to start?
Let's go.
Rock, scissors, shoot.
You win.
Okay. So we started at the pandemic time on a show called Free to Be She with Jennifer Sometimes. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I am.
And she had contacted me via email saying that, we're going to do this movie watch party. I had done a session recording with her a time prior, but not during the heart of the pandemic. But basically, I'm getting people together and we're going to do a movie watch party where we're going to watch Kinky Boots. We're going to watch movies. And then there's going to be a small panel of people that are going to kind of comment or discuss. And so I didn't want to do it. I was almost going to cancel. I didn't want to show up. But thank God I did because I met Savannah. Take it over, girl.
Well,
teed it up for you.
I also had been a guest for Jennifer sometime. She had reached out to me because of my first Living with Cross-Dressing book. And I think maybe I was on twice prior to that and never had seen Julie on the show, had not seen that episode. Also was asked to be on the movie watch party because I love movies. And so we're on this thing and we're all getting ready to set up. We're backstage, haven't started yet. We were going to watch Just Like a Woman was our first film. Or was it Ed Wood? I don't know. We did like 4 of them, actually.
I've never heard of this. This is a great idea. I've been to
fantastic.
It was trans and CD parties and never done this. This is cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. And I'm like, I love movies, so I was all in. I did not have the hesitation. I'm like, put me in, coach. And so we're backstage and we're kind of like just, talking to each other. And Julie is up on her cadenza, changing her mirror, taking the mirror down, putting the mirror up, taking it back down. And me and I think it was the engineer, both looking at each other going, I don't know what she's doing, but it's fun to watch. And so then
she's trying to log into Riverside.
Exactly. No, I am so nervous. Like this was my first thing. I was so nervous. And I not always, but have these dysfunctions where I just feel whatever it is. And so, yeah, I was preparing fully. And like, then I settled into place and we were ready. And I just looked over at Savannah and I was overcome with this feeling that happens very rarely in my life, where you look at the person and you just like imprint, and you're like, I'm going to know this person. And so I think I held up something on my end, a card or a little tchotchke or something, and then Savannah held up a Lego. A
Lego figure or something,
Lego structure that they had done like with their girlfriend. And then I think when was the heart pose thing?
I think it was still pre-show that as we were getting ready to go, just to send you a little heart.
And she sent me a little heart and I just felt so good. So it was instant. The connection was instant.
The energy was there.
Right. And then after I had written an email. It was just very professional, very much like, hey, it was so nice to meet you. I don't know, like maybe we can connect soon. I had a great time, or like sincerely.
There was a very professional, like great to
Yeah.
meet you, polished email, and then there was a second email, and that second email was
drum roll
was I want you to be my person, and I have all these ideas, and I think we should do something together.
Nervous attacher.
Had I known. And I will tell you this, we started with 3 ideas. We kind of settled on one. And I will tell you right now that none of those were a podcast. So
no.
we were going to do a blog. It was going to be like kind of a conversational blog.
Let's back up. Wait,
Yes.
what city did you meet? Where were you at when you met?
I'm
This
still in
was
South
all
Carolina.
online.
Yeah.
This is right. This is virtual.
Oh, okay. Now it makes sense.
Right.
I'm like, I didn't think you guys lived in the same state. Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right.
We're time zones
Locked
apart.
down 2 different states.
That's right. Maddie, listen to your guests. Okay.
No worries. No worries.
Note to self, listen to what your guests are saying.
And so we tried to do this conversational blog that I was going to post for us. It just seemed arduous.
Sister.
Yes, sister and sister.
Sistr. Trademark. I'm just going to whisper that because who knows?
It doesn't work.
That domain.
It doesn't work when you say it. It only works in print, unfortunately. So that was getting too arduous to like kind of manage, and it just seemed tedious. And I finally said, well, why don't we just do a podcast? And then she was game for it. I was game because she was game. And we started talking about names, and it was really funny because the sister was where we started. And then we came up with all these different things that were just like, no. And then all of a sudden, just out of the blue.
Well, we know where the fox came from. You already had that in your styling business.
And I was already a phoenix because I always wear my.
You've risen again.
I've risen again, and this has been my emblem for a long, long time. And it just seemed to be like, why didn't we think of this first?
So what does that say about you? And I have a Playboy bunny on my chest. I don't know.
Nice.
Very shallow. Barbie, Playboy bunny. I've got problems. I've got issues.
It's all good. We all have issues. But some of the issues are not issues.
That's probably why we're here today.
No. We're here. This is not our issue. We got 99 problems and this ain't one. That's all I'm saying to you today.
So you started the podcast July of 2020, if I did my homework correctly.
I think we launched in August. I want to say we did a trailer for Jennifer Sometimes. She had us back on because we were going to start this podcast. We did a trailer, and I think our first episode. I mean, you may be right, but it definitely was between July and August of that year, and we've been almost weekly for 5 years.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah, you guys are disciplined. And so you're available on most all podcast platforms?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, we're on the Spotify's and the iHeart Radios and the Apple Podcast and wherever you get your streaming downloads.
Yeah, and the first episode was we were new to this. So we were just like, and I think you said it would be great if we had an 8th grader to help us right now because, you had never done this. We're figuring it out. And I'm just like, yeah, hey, like I didn't even know what the hell was going on, but because the idea was understanding the feminine cross-dressing experience, because that spoke to
the foundation.
Both of us.
Yeah,
that was the foundation. I could speak to that in such a way, and we were just getting to know each other as friends. Yeah. So if you listen to the first, I'd say 17 episodes. When you first meet a friend and you have like a friend crush or whatever, everything is funny where it normally wouldn't be. Like there's a lot of bits where I talk about her curvaceous ass. I don't do that anymore. So it was very much, I like to listen to it because it was like we were very new and played on that newness, and we could go.
Well, you didn't try to hide it because people would have seen right through that, right? That these people don't really know each other if you pretended you did. So, and again, that's back to authenticity, which helps us in what we're doing, Savannah, is being ourselves. Not that changing your voice is not being authentic, because I think it is if that's what you want to do and present, but I don't change my voice
Nope.
at all. I mean, maybe it's a little different in delivery and whatever, but Maddie can be a lot more snarky than Jim. Jim's more of a pleaser. Maddie doesn't let people get away with too much.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that about the voice thing, because Savannah, I always dreamt of a podcast. I didn't have my person. Of course, I didn't think of it as we're blogging or whatever it is.
Right.
But basically, when talking about with Savannah, one of her hangups and fears was, who would want to hear a voice that sounds like me? And I looked at her. We were on a video call or a Zoom, and I said, everyone, our listenership, our community, they need to hear a voice like yours.
Did you mean your actual voice, Savannah?
I was just talking about my actual voice.
Feminine.
Yeah, because I felt that.
By the way, most people don't like their voice, and if you ask their friends or whatever, and I don't think they're just trying to be nice, they're like, "No, I really like your voice." I've been told that, and I don't like my voice at all.
Mine wasn't about not. You're absolutely right. I have the same problem. People tell me the same thing. They say I have a voice for radio. I don't know what that means, but that's okay. But that being said, I was more concerned about having a cross-dressing show, a male and female cross-dressing show, if I were the only host, and it'd be a lower timbre voice for something that was more feminine or effeminate. And that was where I was concerned that people would tune out because they want to hear something more feminine, where Julie is a perfect foil for me in that way. So she really helped me, no pun intended, gain my voice and have a voice and speak my truth. Just by the fact that as a cis female, she really brings that.
That's interesting. I never really thought about that. Yeah. And I think the authenticity outweighs trust me, I feel you on worrying about sounding like a guy. But I think the authenticity far outweighs that. And then this just kind of goes away. And I think for most people, especially the ones they probably don't even know the difference, but they would know if you weren't being authentic.
True.
If you were really being different, right?
Absolutely. Agreed.
How do you guys decide on your topics and who's going to bring up what? I've listened to some episodes, and I think, Savannah, do you do the topics?
No,
Julie does the topics.
We do it bi-weekly, or every other episode. It's our responsibility to take ownership of the topic. So it's not all me, not all her. I tend to just find things I'm hearing on Reddit, or when I engage with people at a conference, and I got a whole list on my phone of like topics.
Yeah,
there have been times where Julie's like, "Hey, I'm overwhelmed. Can you like cover this week too?"
Totally.
And so we will. We have plenty of like backlog of ideas. We have people who comment on episodes that we then kind of bring back and revive them. But yeah, we try to keep it balanced by it not just being all about my point of view, not all about Julie's point of view. So
yeah, that's nice. I have to work. I do the same thing as you. Ideas will come to my head and I'll make a list of them. I'm also, this is kind of in a previous life, but a songwriter and a producer. And I would always, for song titles or a lyric, if I'm working on a song, a lyric will come to mind if I'm in bed, just waking up in the morning, whatever, and you got to write it down. Yeah. And then you kind of have a list of things to go through. I've been doing interviews like this, and then in between, I've been doing just solo video podcasts. And I really like psychology, and I really like applying the psychology and delving into how it applies to what we're doing. And I think people are relating to that. That doesn't get as many views as the interviews, but it definitely gets attention, and I get a lot of comments and likes, and almost every day I'll get something in an email, and that feels really good. I'm sure you guys have the same.
We do. And I will say, if you love psychology, read my third book, Gender 101, an A to Z handbook and exploration. That's where I only had
2 books. I was going to mention those here in a minute. So I definitely bring that up here because I want to talk about the books.
Okay.
And I also want to talk about the consulting business. And so Julie, in terms of your consulting business, is your clientele just cross-dressers, or you have a general population clientele and you also help us cross-dressers or transvestites? Your favorite word, Savannah?
So I work with the full spectrum of the male to female genderqueer experience,
Okay.
from those who are early in their transition and identify fully as trans, as if someone is transitioning, right? I follow that journey, but also I'd say a large part are people who identify or not as cross-dressers. There's also a portion that I work with non-binary teens. So that's a portion of it. There's also a very small portion that does, work with cross-dressers that see it through their femininity and their feminine identity through the lens of kink. So it is it's all over the place in terms of where people are coming from, in terms of their age.
But it's
And
always in
yeah,
that, I don't know, I'm trying to find the right word. In the community, that's a little different. They're zigging when everybody's zagging. You're not doing consulting in the mainstream. Some woman wants to look great at her office. She's a cis woman, and you're going to help, consult her on designing outfits. Or do you do that?
there in the beginning, and thank you for asking that. In the beginning, it all started being in this virtual space with a client I had in person saying, "Hey, could you style someone in Las Vegas?" And this was a cis 5 foot tall man. And then the second was a cis woman. And then as soon as I found out there was a need for this among trans, especially, it really, it filled me up so much because,
It's not just work.
there's,
It's not just a business. It's a
it's a
passion as
vocation.
well. Yeah.
It's a vocation. And what turns me on about it isn't the brands. It's finding shapes of clothing that feminize a masculine frame. And so when people go through this lookbook journey, it's a process and a product. I get to know them. They take a style questionnaire.
Okay.
And then there's a Pinterest stage where I ask them to pin things that they're drawn to. They are drawn to.
What a great idea.
I often have them go to the Fox and Hanger page where there's all these boards that I've had
Yeah,
people
I've checked
created,
it out.
and maybe pick 15 to kind of start there. And then I give them more specific search words, stuff that pertain to their specific body type. For example, can you search, I'll either do names of stores, or can you search wrap dresses? Because something about a wrap dress, it balances the shoulder, it creates an hourglass figure. So I will tune in and I will, it will be like a very collaborative experience. Then, as soon as I have a good idea of what they want, I'll also let them know that this is style essence. So when you pin, I don't want you to think about what will look good or bad on your body. I want to just see what you were drawn to. And then it's my job as your stylist to find other items that translate
They
to
give you the
your
same
specific
feeling.
body,
Yeah.
that are either the same color, the same style, but are a different cut. Yes, that give you that same feeling. So as soon as I know what they want, then I say, kick back, it's my turn. I hunt on the internet, I piece outfits together. A lot of people get style notes that say their specific size, as well as, I include kind of what it is, but why it works for you, specifically you. Someone who I've gotten to know in terms of your interests, body type. I say specifically why it works. So if no one wants to buy the clothes at all, at least it's a style map
Right.
with
And
directions. So yes,
and do you get involved in hair and makeup at all?
I do. That a lot of that. So hair is part of like the deluxe package. Hair, which are wigs and shapewear, um, will be included in if someone got
Okay.
the deluxe package, which is 5 looks in that. We used to include makeup to it, but it was just not the appropriate placement. The appropriate placement is through the consultation work I do, through individual clients. I'll get to know their colors. We'll do a makeup tutorial. I have a feminization program. So makeup and how to apply and what colors look good is like a whole specific week or two of the program.
Okay.
So it's been such a profound gift to work with this community. And it is something that I am so protective. I have a business partner named
Mama
Kate
Bear.
that kind of, yeah, that
Right,
kind of puts the
Savannah?
layouts together. But I am very much protective, like a mama bear, because I've seen people through transitions, through court dates, through all these many different trans stories. They're all very, very different. So people want to know, are most people like this? Are most people like that? It's all so different, but a large portion of people we work with are, heterosexual, cross-dressing individuals that I say
Yep.
are 50 and above. Then there's other pockets, but it's just,
Speaking of
I
50 and
can't say
above,
enough.
I was
Yes.
going to ask you, by the way, Savannah, did you go through this process with Julie?
She did a complimentary one when we were first kind of having our crush time. And she's like,
Well, of course she did.
I just want to do one for you. So she did. And it was amazing. I have not done that process. I've had consultation on Long Island at Femme Fever with that reveal that you spoke about with Dave from the Glamour Boutique.
Okay.
I've had to spin around looking in the wall
Okay,
of
so you know
mirrors to
exactly
see that
what I was talking
reveal.
about.
That
And it
moment.
was, that moment, like to see, and they're like, well, what do you want to look like? And I'm like, I'm in your hands. You make me look, but however you think is best. And yeah, to have that turnaround and the reveal was just everything. Absolutely. It definitely gives you that sense of seeing yourself as part of yourself.
I remember the first one I had. Yeah, you never forget
you
it.
can never forget. It's
I
amazing.
miss that. I miss that, not working in a virtual space. I miss that. So that moment but I want to reach more people all over.
Right.
So that moment is when they send me pictures in the clothes. Like that just is like chef's kiss. And Savannah, when I did your lookbook, you wanted me to tune into you. And something about the lookbooks is there's, what I know about style and what I know about fashion, but I'd say 80% of it is very intuitive work.
Yeah.
So I tuned into you a lot and I created something. I think it was rather sexy, wasn't it?
It was a little sexy.
Well, I'll have to find it.
You know I'm a sexy
Yeah.
girl.
You little
So.
vixen, you.
Yes.
What? Me?
She
No,
looks
stop.
she looks all wholesome here.
Yes.
I am very wholesome. Don't
Do you
ever
guys,
let anybody take different.
a bit of a not a subject change, but are you aware of the term gender envy?
Am I familiar?
It makes sense to me, but not as a term.
Well,
Yeah.
I had fixated on autogynephilia. Are you familiar with that term and that theory?
Blanchard.
Now, I know part of that theory, the guy does not believe that trans is a real thing. I do not believe that that's true. I believe trans is very much a real thing. But the first part of it is embodying the object of your desire. And I can honestly say when I started dressing, that's what I was doing. I like women. And I think sometimes maybe I like women so much, I just wanted to be one, not to transition.
Oh, Maddie. You should tune in to an upcoming episode of the Fox and the Fingers podcast where we talk all about autogynephilia and its pros, cons, and why it's out of vogue and why it was so popular in the 80s, early 90s. But then the reasoning behind it was really more of the culture and climate about trans people. And when you start actually asking trans people, they're like, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, because I could totally get it.
And I got pushback when I think I've mentioned a couple times on Facebook, and I got pushback. I didn't understand that he had other parts of the theory. I just knew the embodying the object of your desire. And that's what I hung on to. But I more recently discovered gender envy. And to me, that fits more. And there's a sexual component to autogynephilia, embodying the object of your desire, of turning oneself on. But the gender envy, I think, fits more because I've evolved beyond that. And Maddie's a whole different thing with a kind of a life of her own. And when I see a pretty girl, would I want to be with her? Yeah, I would. But there's a big part of me, maybe even a bigger part of me, that wants to be her. Not permanently, just maybe Friday through Sunday.
Sure. It's called ease of use is what that's called.
Yeah, that term really stuck with me.
I also struggled with it. By the way, this is not new territory. Just because I didn't know the word autogonophilia, in 1996, nor cared. There is, Julie and I talk about it all the time about how could you not have a sensualization or sexualizing of your form that's different than your biology. Like the female form is so inviting and amazing and curvy and it gets all the sexy clothes. And so,
I mean, I love looking at women because
Well,
I
and
don't look at men.
as
Yeah.
Elaine says on the Seinfeld episode, she goes, "Man's body, it's just utilitarian. It's like a Jeep."
that's right.
Right.
Which is so true.
Yeah. So to think that there's not a sexual and sensual energy about anything that's trans related, male to female, is absurd. To think that those are compartmentalized and you could say, well, it's only if you're so turned on by the idea of yourself as a woman. I think the statement itself is super, super flawed. Again, it's in my third book, Gender 101. And we talk about Blanchard as well. So
let's talk about the books. Tell us about your books.
Wow. 3 books. So there's 3, there's 2 living with cross-dressing books, Discovering Your True Identity and Defining a New Normal. That's books 1 and 2.
Yes.
And then, I was really having kind of this, problem with everybody undermining the trans experience and like how we're so fetishistic and even how cross-dressers are the outskirts of the trans community. And so I did a deep dive with Gender 101, A to Z handbook and exploration, basically as a tool to debunk as much as I could find, whether it be Blanchard's work or other things. I even went back to Magnus Hirschfeld because like you, as you said, and I said earlier, I hated the term transvestite. But once I started reading what he had done in life and like the advancements and like the positive growth of our community, I actually like felt bad that like I didn't love the word transvestite.
That you didn't love it
because
I think it's just society. I think it's when we grew up and it was just society. Transvestite is the person on the corner,
the tranny,
streetwalker, tranny type thing, and which is not accurate at all. But I think as you're growing up, these norms get embedded in your brain.
And that's absolutely true. In the 80s, early 90s, anything that was trans or tranny related was always the villain or victim on every
and on
show.
TV or movies. That's always portrayed.
So this book, the third book, is really like a love letter to the trans experience to say, like the people say, oh, well, you're an abomination. That's what the Bible says. Or if like, genetically we were made a certain way, only male and female, there's no non-binariness. So basically I take all the points we always hear and kind of dig deep into the mythos and say, you know what? I'm not asking you to change your mind, but I'm giving you a little bit more ammunition to think about as you go forward with all these points.
I'm just reading my notes. The one thing I wanted to mention, I think you mentioned it in your book, Savannah, that clothing, maybe it was on the podcast, that clothing was the last part to come in my journey. It was the first thing that came, and it was the mind part that came last. So to me, mine was the opposite. It was the mind part that was first. Didn't really know what to do with clothes and didn't, again, it was starting with nylons with mom, but it was really in my head. And then the clothes, you started putting it on top of it and creating this presentation or illusion, if you will. So you see it as kind of backwards?
Well, for myself, because there was no thought process. There was just I like that thing. I'm going to pursue that thing. I didn't sit there and be like, because you asked me first, what was the word, the adjective? And I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
I just like doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, I liked what I liked. I didn't see anything wrong with it because at that time I didn't, as a young kid, we're not taught, hopefully at that age, to know it's not right, quote unquote. And so I just enjoyed it and pursued it. And it was only until my, after my formative years where I really started doing some self-analysis and introspection to say, what does this mean to me? And why does it mean what it means to me? And that's kind of the cause of the books. I'm looking at my books up on my wall.
Yeah. So keep going on your books.
Yeah. So the first book was written, Defining a New Normal, because I told my girlfriend to read the book that was out there. And so she read it, and I had not read it. And so she read it, and it was all about a cross-dresser's journey, but they eventually transitioned. And so everything she read was basically throwing myself under a bus, because I'm like, oh, that's not me. That's not
she assumed that's what you were going to do.
Yeah. She's like, but that's what the book said. And I'm like, oh, damn it. So I've already written, I'm a writer by nature. I've written several books. And so I'm like, well, you know what? I'll just write the book. And I'm going to do interviews with other couples of non-transitioning cross-dressing men. And so it's kind of a bunch of essays and kind of speculation and anecdotes. And then the second book, which is just a Discovering Your True Identity, was really the sequel prequel of the first book, to say, well, you had a conversation with your partner. You had enough wherewithal to say, I'm this person. But what I failed to do is teach the individual how to get to the point of having that conversation, of being able to answer the questions.
Okay.
So that was kind of like, it was like an expansion of book one and kind of a retelling of like, hey, this is about you. This is about you, the male to female cross-dressing person, and what's going on with you, and how do you figure out what it is you need, want, and deserve. And then the third book is just kind of me, kind of keep going down that road of I do the analysis. I know where I'm at, but why am I where I'm at? I'm always like questioning the thing that I'm finding out.
Yeah,
so the third book was all about kind of keep digging deep down that world and coming up with, autogonophilia, coming up with like, why do female hyenas have bigger penises than their counterparts? Why do clownfish, if they're all male, one would become female? There's all these things that we see in nature, but yet somehow when it comes to the human condition, that doesn't exist anymore. And also, like, we always hear the questions like, why do you do it? And I'm like, I don't know why I do it. I don't know. Maybe there's a fold in my brain that's different. Who knows? But I try to ask myself the beyond the because, and ask deeper question of like, well, there must be a reason why. And it's not just because I'm a cross-dresser.
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
And do you think you'll ever know completely? I feel like I've learned a lot, and I've discovered a lot and worked hard at it, just because it's my nature. But I don't think I'll ever fully understand it.
I think there's a point where you can't know the unknowable. There are as in your industry, there are unknown unknowns, and sometimes you're never going to get there. You're never going to like breach that line in the sand of this unknowable thing, because it's so ingrained in our psyche. Why does anybody do what they do? That's a very deep psychological question to ask. So.
Yeah. And I love psychology and digging into that and analyzing. Sometimes it drives you nuts a little bit, but, I'm able to turn it off. So, I want to change subjects here a little bit, or quite a bit actually. And I wanted to get your feeling, obviously, our community, the trans community, just the LGBTQ community in general is being attacked, viciously. And like, I don't want to say never before, because it's been attacked in the past and it's overcome, which is great. And I think a lot of us should know more of our history. I know some of my friends and especially the younger people don't really know the history of our community. But I think that because I had a conversation with my brother, and he's Republican, he's conservative. I love my brother. We're not that close because we're so different, but and he knows him and his wife know about Maddie. But I had a dinner with him and started talking to him about things. And in a nutshell, he basically said, I don't care what they do, just don't shove it down my throat. And he's not the only one that's told me that. And these are smart, fair people, at least fair in other areas. But there's something to that. And so I'm wondering, if the community, rightly so, has pushed so hard and come so far, and again, rightly so, that I think there's going to be a natural pushback, to where, okay, they feel like it's being shoved down their throat. It's not really. But when they walk into Target and there's a pride display, and then every sports team has a pride night, and you can't watch a TV show or a movie without a gay person or, a trans person in the film or TV show, which is awesome for the community. I just think that the general population is feeling like, and then the pronoun stuff. And then, of course, when you have people stoking it, it makes it even worse. But what's your opinion on maybe the community could just take a step back and go, I'm glad we've gotten to where we've gotten. We've gotten a long ways, and maybe be a little more precise as to how the next push goes, because it's still not fair. What do you guys think about that?
I think so much about that, about this. I think that when I started this business all those years ago, people would say, "Oh, that's so niche. That's so sweet," or "That's strange," or whatever it is.
bless
And
your little
oh,
heart for
bless you,
doing that.
oh, bless your heart. You know what I mean? Like, so I always felt like there's a real need. There was always a drive, but the drive was to be visible, right? Trans community fought for visibility for so long when people didn't even see them as existing. Well, part of being visible is being out there, being exposed. Suddenly it's a thing. Suddenly it's politicized.
Normalizing it.
Suddenly.
Yeah.
It's normalizing it. Suddenly, if a kid says, I feel like a boy today, suddenly you have these parents that have this, wokeness, or this, they have these two sides of how to be a good parent. And the truth of the matter is teenagers and kids, they didn't have all this language for all this stuff. I mean, I didn't feel connected with my body as a female or a male. But if I was a certain age, would I say I was non-binary? Like the
No.
language wasn't there. And I do believe it's a lot. I do believe that, doctors still don't know enough about it. So trying to be supportive, you have a child that says that they're trans, and so, or a cross-dressing individual that's trying to get, further at a gender clinic. Suddenly this doctor is pushing hormones when it may not be that.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff going on where I see both sides of it. And the protection I feel for the trans community is like animalistic, right? I will do everything and anything. It's it's my goal. Like when they say, like, during this political lens, you have to pick one lane and be like, that's my thing. Or at least that was when Biden won. It was like, pick one thing because there's so many. And then
Right.
when Trump was in office, it was like, oh my God. But for me, every day there's a new violent attack on the trans community, and it breaks my heart. The Medicaid thing, and it
Oh yeah.
makes me feel like
But
I can't breathe.
but the part that just puzzles me. I'm more frustrated with my neighbors, friends, and neighbors, because while I can be mad at Trump and the administration, these people voted them in, and they'll
Right.
defend them to this day. I'll go to the bar tonight, and I'd say the majority of the bar supports them. Maybe not extreme, but yet they'll be sweet to me. They'll hug me and say hi and buy me a drink, or it just, that blows my mind. And I just, I'm thinking, if our community could take a step back and go, how do we make the next push forward without them feeling like it's being shoved down their throat? Which, again, it's not being shoved down their throat, but if that's what they perceive, that's what they perceive, and they perceive it enough to put those evil people in office. So what's wrong
There's
with the
nothing
community
wrong.
in terms of what they're trying to accomplish?
No,
Well,
that makes
this is
sense.
I just want to say one more thing about it, and then I have said my piece, and I'd love to hear Savannah's feels and takes on it. This is something we discuss a lot. Basically, the trans world, it may be a small percentage of people, but I view it as, it's not a trans problem. It's a humanity shift. It's a shift in humanity. So we're going to just expand and grow into this beautiful thing. We're learning that sexuality and gender are two
Right.
different things. Not only is this not going anywhere, but this
No.
is how humanity is growing and developing. And so when Republicans come into power and it's very, very, let's kill all the blue things and let's take away all the blue things or whatever it
Right.
is, they
Right.
can do all that they want.
It's
And you
almost
know
down
what?
to that. If it's blue, I hate it. Yeah, you're right.
And because of the administration, they're taking away a lot of trans people won't survive because
No.
it's just the world is so horrible. But this is a humanity thing. Not only are we, me as an honorary, as an ally, not only are we not going anywhere, but we are a beautiful expression of humanity, and humanity is expansive and beautiful, and we're just
It's
going
what
to keep
makes
on
life.
growing.
It's what makes life colorful, and I think that's part of why I say that community to me is more fun. And I've always said that I felt like I was walking around life with a box of 8 crayons, and somebody handed me a box of 32 when Maddie
Right.
was born, and it's just more colorful. I don't think those people understand that. Savannah, what are you thinking?
Oh, I'm thinking many things. The first is
That you can say on air.
I can say many things on air. But I'm not very political, but I will tell you, typically there's always needs to be a villain. And we happen to be the villain this decade or the last 20 years.
It's funny though, you never hear crossdresser. It's just trans.
Oh, no, that's not true, because there's plenty of bills.
Really
there's been plenty of bills put out to the state houses that use what they consider cross-dressing to villainize trans needs, because they fetishize people who cross-dress just to, have bedroom play. All of a sudden, that's the boogeyman to say that trans people don't deserve what they need.
And it's the guy in the skirt in the girl's bathroom.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so they're not using always the word cross-dresser. Yeah, they're always going to take something, villainize it in order to attack the marginalized.
You create a boogeyman and then you save everybody from the boogeyman, right?
You have to have somebody to fight. Otherwise, nobody's going to get behind you. If you just spoke on let's make the world a better place, they're like, yay. If you tell them we need to take care of those terrible people, it's like, yay. That's how you get that kind of feminist nature to play out.
I wonder how the gay community did it, because they were treated the same way back in the day.
They were treated that in the 80s, civil rights in the 60s, suffrage in the 30s. It's like, this is just our turn. Unfortunately, we live in a modern era. And as Julie said, people understand the vernacular. The kids understand what they're hearing on TikTok. They know the words. They know the language. They know the labels. Good point. So there is there's an uprising
because there's social media and cable, and so they just see it more.
Yeah,
the boogeyman is more visible.
Absolutely, we are absolutely more visible in the last 20 years than we ever have been. So it's not like we've never been around. And like Julie said something about the shift. The shift is not a shift forward; it's a shift back. Like, we've been around for millennia. And if you go to plenty of countries around the world, plenty of cultures around the world, non-binariness is part of the culture.
It's in the Bible.
It's in the Bible. But then they do the abomination and Deuteronomy. That's a whole other thing. But if you look at like Northern European waspy kind of stuff that came to America, the Native Americans were very much non-binary.
Two spirits.
In a lot. Well, not all the tribes, but it existed. And they communed with their bodies and with their nature. There was not villainizing certain people because you acted a certain way as much as we do now. So it needs to be a shift back to like the humanity that we used to have before the rise of the 19th and 20th century.
But I wonder if the gay community just kept pushing, when they got pushed way back, or they stepped back and said, okay, let's take our next steps forward in this fashion. My wheels are just spinning on how do we do it? Take the heat off and then regroup and then push forward again. That makes sense.
You can't, because the pushback is so dire right now. There's so much erasure of the trans experience, whether it's in the military, whether it's gender affirming care, whether it's your passport. I mean, DEI is like off the table these days.
Yeah.
The Enola Gay has been scrubbed from the history books when it comes to the Department of Defense because it said gay in the title.
Gay in it, yeah.
You know,
Do
these
a word
things,
search
the
and
absurdity is hit critical mass. So unfortunately, yes, we could have soft shoed trans experience and the queer experience, like make it more palatable for people. We could have done that, but we didn't, because just like the civil rights in the 60s, there's things being done to the community that are not appropriate, that are not of equality, are not of just being human. So yes, we tried to save the people who needed a community by rising up and having pride. And unfortunately, it was just like segregation. It's like the people in power are always going to try to push back because they got what they got.
People don't like change. They don't,
and they also don't want to lose what they think they're going to lose by endorsing.
Right.
So,
right. All right. Well, I appreciate your opinions on that. I'm going to try more to try and build bridges, and I want to have some, again, mainstream general population people on the podcast. And because I have friends that are in that group, and they're asking me questions about the pronouns or what's the difference between a trans woman and a crossdresser, and they're genuinely wanting to know so they can communicate better or just know better in their minds. Yeah. And so I think we could do more of that, even if it's one person at a time. But when you know this firsthand, they just get to know you. Mm-hmm. They could be a total Trumper or far right, whatever. They get to know you as a human being, and they can like you. They can like us.
Yeah.
And they realize, oh, they're not that they're not evil. They're not a threat at all. In fact, they're really cool people.
Yeah. People are not the problem.
One at a time.
Yeah. People are not the problem. It is the fear mongering by those who need to use it are the problem. So yeah, absolutely.
Well,
I've been in South Carolina for
people.
Yeah. I've been in South Carolina for 7 years now, and I've never met anybody Southern Baptist, very conservative, very Republican, very right wing. I've never had a bad experience down here since I've moved here. So.
Yet they go in the voting booth and vote for somebody that wants to eradicate us. It's mind blowing. Well, anyway, that does it for this episode. Thanks, Savannah, and thanks, Julie, for your time and for sharing. I appreciate it. I will post links to all your social media and your podcast, and the books, et cetera, in the show notes below, so everybody can access that. And again, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Maddie. Have fun tonight.
Thank you, Maddie. Bye.
All right, you too. Take care.